Well, for more on this story, we're now joined by Kevin Lovell, who's the CEO of the South African Poultry Association. Thanks so much for joining us. I suppose these things come and go over time. Has this been a surprise?
Well, it's the first time we've ever had highly pathogenic avian influenza in chickens in South Africa. It's been in ostriches, not this strain, a few times in the last 10 years or so. But it is a bit of a shock to us following the outbreak in Zimbabwe. And I guess like most farmers, we think, oh, it's somebody else's problem, and all of a sudden it's now our problem. It's not somebody else's problem. It's not a big problem yet. The chickens that are affected, 2 farms now. One is the broiler farm that you were using the number of 24,000 from. That's a farm that produces the baby chickens, which will grow out to what we eat. It's a tiny, tiny percentage of what we would normally eat, no risk to supply. The next farm to have been affected is a laying egg farm, the eggs that we eat, and about 1% of the national flock is now affected. It also won't have a big impact.
How does it manifest? How did we get it?
Well, these are birds, and diseases fly. You know, with other animals, they jump and they walk. So now you can't stop wild birds flying, and this is a present from Europe. The Europeans have had major outbreaks, more than 1,000 in chickens in the last year, more than 1,600 in wild birds. Those wild birds have flown down. Their route takes them to the Western Cape. I think they get to the epicenter of colonialism, get a fright and rush back. But what they've done in the process is they've actually infected local wild birds, water birds, and it's likely that the outbreaks so far come not directly from the European wild birds, but from those that they infected on their way down and their way back. That means that there's a good chance that the disease could spread. The US had a very big outbreak about 1.5 years ago, 233 outbreaks, 30 odd were from wild birds, the rest were from people, hence government's order. But as viewers saw in that clip, this is people's livelihoods. So we're meeting with the government, with Department of Agriculture tomorrow in an emergency response team meeting, and we'll be assessing how do we manage disease management and people's livelihoods and try and find the right balance.
Let's talk about those two things. Let's start with the disease management. It's on 2 farms at the moment.
Okay.
How do you contain it? Is it possible?
Well, you can't stop it getting in because of the work, but something went wrong in those 2 farms' biosecurity, and we don't know definitively yet, but you can stop it spreading. So the farms are quarantined, nothing goes in or out. All of the birds will be depopulated. Those that are actually sick will be depopulated quickly, and you use different methods. Those that are in the infected area will be gradually depopulated in a slightly more humane way, so that you get rid of all the possibility of disease spread. Then you go through a careful cleaning process. You do a lot of sampling and checking. About 6 months from now, those farms will be able to be refilled.
So they're shut down for 6 months.
About. It could be slightly less or slightly more, depending on a few steps in the way.
And then the other side now is the selling of live hens, which is...
It's a livelihood for many people.
Yeah.
And those live hens are actually what we call spent hens, which is sort of polite term for meaning they're finished, they're tired, they're not productive hens anymore, and they're sold live. Not actually, as your clip said, because they're cheaper, because actually they're more expensive, but because they taste almost the same and have a similar texture to village chickens, because they're old chickens. The chickens most people eat are babies or teenagers. They don't taste the same. And
so the taste, it's for the taste.
It's for boiling as opposed to broiling or grilling or things like that.
So what do they do? Is it the whole country or just that area that they can't sell live hens?
The order is for the whole country because the hens move around the whole country. And that's one of the ththings we'll be discussing tomorrow. How do we manage the risk and livelihoods and find a good balance that minimizes harm to, because it's mostly the smaller farmers and traders who are going to suffer, and the likelihood of disease spread, knowing that people are the main agent for spreading this disease. It's not going to be an easy conversation. There isn't a right or a wrong answer, and some people will lose out, I'm afraid.
How long could this last?
Well, it depends how many more outbreaks we get, and it's too early to predict. Obviously, because I'd like to be positive, would like to believe we've done it now, this is enough, but it is realistically possible it could be more.
Okay, so then how is it that we can still go to the shops tomorrow and buy a chicken and it'll be fine?
Because the amount of broilers, the breeders that made the broilers, the amount affected is tiny. The amount of eggs laying hens affected is tiny, about 1%. That's why they're all going to be there, and there'll be a way of compensating. If it spreads, it actually can have an impact on food availability and food security. This strain isn't bad for humans. There are some avian influenzas that are, and there's about almost 2 years of European experience of this for us to know that the risk to humans is, there is no risk actually.
So one of the things that we have to do is report to our neighbours that we've had this outbreak.
Correct.
How does that affect our exports and trade?
2 ways. Is that we're a member of the World Organization for Animal Health, South Africa that is, and so everyone reports. When the Zimbabweans had their outbreak, they reported and we immediately stopped trade. There was very little trade. Now we have it, so we report it, and all of the importing partners have the right to say no, but we have a system called compartments. We say we know exactly what's going on in that particular space, and if the importing country accepts the compartment, and a number do, then trade will continue. There might be a short gap while they say please do some extra tests, but it's their call, it's not our call. They must say yes, we're happy, we think it's safe.
So, I mean, I feel reassured, and I hope that's a good interpretation of the things that you're saying. But so we have the capabilities and the science and the expertise to manage this kind of scenario, so that, you know, we need not fear too much. We have the African expert on avian influenza as a research professor at the University of Pretoria, the Honours to Port faculty. We have a range of other sets of expertise. No one knows everything, that's why the disease came in. But South Africa is well positioned to manage this. There's a very, very close relationship with the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries and us. In fact, lots of meetings every day, throughout the day, weekends as well, as we cooperatively work together. And that's why we're meeting tomorrow, is what are we doing right? What do we need to change? We will develop this. South Africa has experience with ostriches. It's a different bird and there's some differences, but we're not at sea. But to reassure people, this one is not dangerous for humans. The outbreaks so far are very limited. They won't have an effect. There is a risk, of course, it could spread. And you as viewers can help. If you see any wild bird mortality, especially near water sites, please tell the Department of Agriculture or tell us. There could be other reasons why they're dying, and then we'll go and look and make sure, and we'll control, but we need your support. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin Lovell, CEO of SA Poultry Association, with a warning: if you see any dead birds anywhere, just report it straight away. And that's where we're going to leave it for the time